Welcome to Lickin' on Lending, the podcast that dives deep into the heart of the mortgage industry. Your host, David Lickin, bringing you the latest insights, trends, and updates from the world of mortgages. Whether you're a seasoned industry veteran or just getting started, this show is your go-to source for all things mortgage. Let's get started. This is Lickin' on Lending. Now your host, David Lickin.
Listeners, I keep talking about the Total Expert Conference. It was such a great conference. And one of the great conversations I had there was with our guest today, James Duncan. He is the founder and Chief Marketing Strategist at Caelum Advisors. It's a consultant that works with mortgage lenders and financial brands. He helps leaders of teams decide what they want to reach and what they want to achieve. He is just so good at it. But one of the things that caught my attention when we were visiting at the Total Expert Conference in Denver was the amount of technology that's not being used and how to get efficiencies out of it. It was a conversation that I wanted to bring to you, our listeners, because it was so valuable as I listened to him to talk. Not only that, I met James originally through Melissa Langdale, one of my favorite people. I just love Melissa and what her heart is to help people. And she and James have teamed up as well in some things. So anyway, James, good to have you with me on the podcast. Appreciate you joining me.
Great to be here. Great to be here, David. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, yeah, you and I originally met when Melissa had me on her podcast, and that was a really fun interview. I really enjoy meeting you, and then seeing you there in Denver was really good. But tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey to what you're doing now.
All right. For about the past 9 or 10 years, I have held a couple different roles as the head of marketing, first for Thrive Mortgage. And
that's right.
I took over as the head of marketing shortly before we rebranded from the name Georgetown Mortgage over to Thrive. So my team and I led the company through that whole transition. And
that was a good move, by the way. I love the name Thrive. And Randall Gillespie, one of my other favorite people on the planet. He is just such a delightful person. You guys work together. So
yeah, he was a great leader and executive to work under and to work with. He and I still have a great working relationship. We'll text or chat with each other on the phone at least once a week, if not more frequently than that. But yes,
delightful human being. Yeah. And Roy and the team there at Thrive, formerly Georgetown Mortgage, really assembled a great team. And you always look at that. You're known by the company you keep. And so my respect for Roy and Michael and what they built there was pretty significant.
Yeah.
I'm really interested, about what you're doing now. Tell people it is exactly what it is that you're doing in your words.
Absolutely. Obviously Thrive was acquired by Lower. And so during that transition, I came over as SVP of marketing for Lower for about 12 months and just helped navigate through that transition and really enjoyed that time there because it was exposure to just a different culture, a different way of doing things, different way of marketing. And so I learned a lot during that 12 months and got to a point where this concept of branching out and starting my own consulting agency had been a back burner idea for the last 5 or 6 years. Yeah. And then it gradually started moving its way to the front burner and became something where I just came to a realization. It was like, I got to do this. And it was a very fortuitous transition and officially launched Caelum in April of 2025. So we've been going for about 8 months now. At the end of December will be 8 months. And it's been a decidedly steep learning curve in its own right. A lot of stuff changes when everything is on your shoulders. So it's been a lot of fun and very educational, and I would absolutely do it again in a heartbeat because of conversations I get to have and the things I do. The purpose in me wanting to start my own agency was for years and years, I had been working with loan officers to change the hearts and minds of the sales professional and understanding what great marketing strategy actually looks like. And met with a lot of success in doing that and was able to win over a lot of people to new ways of thinking, but decided that it was time for me to invert that funnel. And instead of focusing on the individual sales teams, now I want to focus on the executives, because once you change the hearts and minds of the executive, that has the tendency to really permeate throughout the rest of the culture and the leadership. So I figured that I had a little bit bigger classroom, if you will, if I was able to work with executives on their company's marketing strategy and introduce them to especially the mid-level and smaller IMBs. The big ones, they probably got a pretty substantial marketing division, and they probably have most of the stuff figured out. It's one of the reasons why they're big or why they're the size that they are. So I want to help the little guys. I want to help the medium size or the smaller size or the folks that are starting their own ventures and be able to work with them and help them establish those modern marketing strategies for their organizations.
Is it almost like a fractional type role that you play?
That's a great way to classify it. I don't refer to myself as a fractional CMO, but that's usually the light bulb moment that goes off.
Category that you get dropped into, the bucket you get dropped into. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, there's an interesting story about your name. Share that with our listeners, because I always look at how do people come up with the names of their companies. I love that story.
I appreciate you bringing that up. It is a fun story and someone that I'm very fond of telling for anyone who asks, so I'll gladly oblige. Being a marketer, when you are working with other people or other companies, clients, what have you, it's very easy for a marketer to come up with suggestions or with ideas or those concepts that are going to work for other people. But when it comes to doing it for yourself, it's darn near impossible. And any marketer can
That's the
attest to
truth.
this.
Describing your services or anything like that, I'd have that struggle with my own consulting business.
Yeah.
Yet I help people with their messaging.
Exactly right. You know this about me. I'm a Christian, and my faith is very, very important to me. So I wanted there to be something that was where there was a true connection to my faith, but not so much that it was just in your face and overt about it. I wanted that connection more to be for me personally, because I wanted to always have a constant reminder of what I do, the reason why I do it, and who I do it for. Right. And so that's where the name was born. My wife and I was struggling trying to come up with a name that just fit. Yep. And my wife and I were at dinner one night. We were talking about it, and both of us on our phones just Googling different words. And as a man of faith, was Googling Old Latin or Old Greek terminology, and nothing really fit. And then my wife stopped and said, "Huh," and then turned her phone around and said, "What do you think of that word?" And it was the word Caelum, Caelum. And I looked at it, and I was like, "That's an interesting word. I've never seen it before."
Never heard of it.
As we did more research, we found that it is an Old Latin word that loosely means sky or high heaven. Yeah. And the hair, and I got goosebumps, and the hair stood up on my arms when I read the line that ancient Roman historians would use the word Caelum with a capital C as their designation for Yahweh, the creator of the world and everything in it. And I was like, that's it. It was one of those aha moments where it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Yeah. That's awesome. And so Caelum Advisors was born.
I love that. One of the things you said when we were together is 60 to 70% of MarTech or marketing technology spend is essentially dead weight. Why is so much still sitting idle?
Dave, the short answer for that is that most lenders bought that tech to feel competitive, necessarily to be effective. And the buying decision was more of an emotional one or an external one. But when it comes to adoption and engagement of MarTech, that's an operational function. That's something that's internal. The article that I mentioned to you when we were together that I published on LinkedIn had a number of sources in there. One of the sources was a Gartner study that showed that the average company only uses about 1/3 of the capabilities that they're paying for. So in mortgage term, that means roughly 70% of that tech budget is not driving conversion or revenue.
Yeah. That's a really good point, because especially when you have Gartner is probably one of the most foremost authorities when it comes to research, and those are great quotables, and they're dependable quotables in their statistics and their analysis. It is a pretty astounding statistic when you start looking at that. When you go into a lender and you run into a MarTech, again, market technology audit, what is it that you're actually looking at?
And this is something that I developed when I was head of marketing for Thrive, and then introduced it when I transitioned over to Lower. But being in charge of my own agency and doing this on behalf of clients, you got to come up with a clever name. So I came up with the name is the Tech Check 7. It's not the easiest thing to say. I might need
a good marketing guy comes up with a good name. Yeah.
There you go. I might need a workshop. It's a little bit of a tongue twister, but basically it's 7 steps. And it's a process that you go through for evaluating and using a framework to determine whether or not you're getting the full effectiveness out of the various different technology platforms that you're leveraging. So the first step that you go through is you got to inventory. You inventory the platforms. You take a look at the number of seats that you've got, what you're spending on those seats per month, who's paying it. Is it an enterprise relationship where the company's paying for it? Is it payroll deduction or direct billing? How's the cost being covered? And you just go through that examination. Step 2 is looking at your real world adoption. So of all of the user seats, what percentage have logged in the last 30 days? Now
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
That's an interesting analysis.
And when you take it a step further, logins tell part of the story. The biggest thing that you're looking for when you're looking at those logins is, did the users actually hit that tool's primary action? So it's a metric that I would refer to as the moment of value. And that's your real adoption number. Because just checking logins, great. You check off your attendance card. You logged in within the last 3 months. That's great. What did you do with the technology when you actually got in there? Did you do the thing that tool is intended to provide for you? Step 3, you do a quick calculation on the ROI per funded loan. So every closed and funded loan that tool influenced or touched, you do an examination, you divide the monthly cost by the number of loans that it influenced. And so now you can actually compare all the different technology tools that you have on an apples to apples basis. And if that number is really high, then you got a problem. If it's north of $300 a month, or per funded loan, you got a problem. If it's sub 100, that's a pretty good spot to be. Absolutely. Number 4, you take a look at the workflow and the data integration. So does this tool actually communicate with your other tools? And this is something that goes back to my Thrive days. I always hated the term tech stack, but I know that it's very widely used. I personally prefer the term tech ecosystem, because when I think tech stack, I think of this Jenga tower of technology, and you remove the wrong block and everything comes crumbling down. Nobody wants that. Yes. Tech ecosystem for me is a little bit more analogous to this interconnected web where everything is working seamlessly. If something comes along better, that performs better than one particular widget, that you just pop out the old widget, plug in the new, everything keeps humming right along. That's the way that I'm very visual in my analogies and the way that I operate. So that's the way I like to think of it. But if that tool is not properly communicating with your LOS, with your CRM, with any kind of borrower intelligence platform that you're using, whether Power BI or something else, something like that, then that's good. If it's creating an additional 5 hours a week of manual work on behalf of the team that's supposed to manage that platform, that's not efficient, especially in today's day and age. So we examine those. Step number 5 is takes a look under the hood at your culture and your training and enablement health. So when was the last time that you conducted any kind of training around a particular tool? Do you have an internal subject matter expert that is the one responsible for delivering those trainings? What percent of your population of users completed that last training model? Then step number 6, you look for redundancy and overlap. So do you have a CRM that overlaps with 4 to 10 other tools that are in your arsenal? If it does, then you've got a lot of redundancy, and there's probably doing this examination is where you really get into finding where all of that waste and that spoilage or the over maximization of your budget is really taking place, and where a lot of cost savings come in. And then number 7, just kind of wrap everything all together, is that strategic alignment. And that each tool needs to map to one primary objective. It's either client acquisition, client conversion, or client retention. If you cannot definitively point to or assign one of those primary objectives to that particular platform, that tool, in my opinion, should be one of the first ones to be considered on the chopping block. And then you take all of this analysis, you roll it into kind of a scorecard summary, and from that point on, your decision making around the technology that you adopt is no longer an emotional decision or a nice to have decision, or you're not doing it for the purposes of recruiting. You're doing it based off facts and data.
Yeah, which it should be based on. You talk a lot about adoption and enablement. What have you learned about relationship between training culture and actual usage of these tools?
Most of the issues when it comes around adoption and engagement, most of the issues are really They're not technology problems. They're enablement and leadership problems, just wearing a different mask. And the tech exposes where a particular company's culture is not really committed to the process of increasing that adoption and engagement. They'll have, with most platforms, you'll have a big shiny rollout. You'll have an hour-long vendor-led webinar. Maybe you send out a slide deck and say, here's your resources. And then it's crickets as far as any kind of additional ongoing training. And that's problematic because this is not something where there are very few technology platforms out there where if the intent is for the user to log in and actually perform some function, there are very few platforms out there that are so intuitive that everybody, that 100% of your audience who's going to be a subscriber to this particular platform is going to get it on an hour-long webinar. Because let's face it, training webinars are boring and they're not particularly all that engaging. And if somebody falls a little bit behind, then there's a good tendency that, and I know this from my days of being a public school teacher, if you got a couple of people that are falling behind and you're not pulling them along to help them gain the understanding that they need, then they're going to tune out. Yep. And I think that's what a lot of lenders face. And so there's very easy ways to fix this by, instead of doing these hour-long or half-day trainings for people to learn a platform, invest the time in giving them exactly what they need to get started, but have on a very short cadence, have a follow-up and say, okay, you learn the basics, here's the next iteration, and then here's the next iteration. And so there are ways of doing this that I help my clients structure what that workflow looks like. The biggest thing is going to be and having an internal SME or an internal subject matter expert or internal champion, whoever that designated person happens to be, to act as your tier one support. And that person is also responsible for creating micro training content, just a little quick 5-minute, whether you use StreamYard or Loom or some kind of screen sharing platform. If you will send out on a regular cadence, it doesn't necessarily have to be weekly, but like bi-weekly, a couple times a month, sending out these little micro training segments of 5 minutes long, and give them some kind of pro tip, one win, one use case, one victory. And the more you do that, the more that you engage in delivering that kind of information to your user base, you will see adoption skyrocket. Because let's face it, loan officers do not want to, if this is your audience, loan officers do not want to spend an hour every other week watching a whole bunch of videos or sitting on a training that's not structured the right way or doesn't deliver them the thing that they need. And you have to really commit to just relentless repetition of these steps. And another pro tip is, if you've got power users within your organization, let's say you've got, well, I'll use Mortgage Coach, for example. I'm a big fan of Dave Savage and what he's built at Mortgage Coach. If you've got top producers who are perennial President's Club qualifiers, and they are avid Mortgage Coach users, have them be a part of those training sessions and say, this is how I scaled to 80 million or to 100 million or beyond.
That's very motivating. Yep. One of the problems today, James, is so many people that are recruiting and doing a good job of recruiting are finding that they are under pressure to accept every mortgage loan originator they recruit their preferred CRM. That creates where I know one company's got 5, and one company's got 7 different CRMs inside of their origination platform being used by different originators. That's an impossible thing, and that brings down adoption. Are you seeing this as well, and what would you say to them?
Yeah, it's a very pervasive problem, and it's definitely a decision that executives need to not take lightly. My personal opinion, back when I was leading the marketing division at Thrive, we had one corporately supported and endorsed CRM that had full integration with both point of sale as well as loan origination system. Just one. And that was the one that my team and I spent the bulk of our time managing and building the campaigns in. Yep. If you want to allow 2, 3, 5 different CRMs and make those available to your user base, you can do it, but you better expect some pushback from your marketing division, and justifiably, because a CRM, and just to stick with this example, a CRM is one of the biggest bandwidth hogs that I don't believe that a lot of executives really take into consideration when they think about how they're going to support it. Nor is it really necessary, because everybody's got their own kind of flavor of what works for them. That's a decision for a particular organization. Now, if you're an organization the size of, just to use an example, Across Country or Fairway or Guild, maybe you can hire enough staff into the marketing division or into your tech teams to be able to manage that. If so, great. Good on you. But the bottom line is, if you are going to require a team of 6 marketing professionals who are already juggling a dozen or so different hats on a daily basis, if you're going to require that team to support multiple different CRM platforms, think of it this way. Think of, if you, in my opinion, a CRM is just as important as your loan origination system. Yes. So imagine allowing 4 different loan origination systems within your organization and having to support that. That's what your marketing team goes through. If you are going to enable there to be multiple different CRMs or other different platforms that all have redundant purposes. So you have to be much more intentional about that. If somebody's not tells you that they're not going to join your organization because of the fact that you will not acquiesce and allow them to bring over or to continue to use a CRM that you don't have a relationship with, that actually might be a red flag for you to reconsider hiring that person, because it's symptomatic that there's something else underlying the decision. Because I don't personally know of any recruit, or I've never seen an example of a recruit who departed one lender and went to another lender simply because of the CRM.
That's right. Yeah, I agree with you on that, especially when you're looking at the effort and the cost. We're all trying to reduce costs, not increase costs, and having multiple systems. I get the challenge, because a lot of people saying, yeah, you bring it over, you come over here, you can keep your healthcare system, you get to keep your CRM that you're used to working with. We'll support it, no problem. That creates an additional cost barrier. Yeah. One of the things we're seeing everywhere is AI. It is showing up more and more, but a lot of teams seem stuck in this shiny new tool mode. What are you actually seeing, and when it comes to AI adoption and the ROI as it relates to the mortgage industry?
That's a great question. And I will say that I am pleased this is something I've been watching for the last couple of years, ever since I think it was November of 22 when ChatGPT was first released to the public. And I've been a fan of playing around with it and learning everything that I can learn about all the different AI platforms since then. But the industry, it's been interesting watching the industry's response. And I'm glad to say that, in my opinion, the industry has largely moved past this question of should we use AI to are we using it well? And again, in the article that I published back in May, and also in a subsequent follow-up that I did in September, discovered that over 2/3 of marketing teams now use some form of generative AI tools. And over 90% of the CMOs who are using it say that they are seeing ROI from it. The problem is that too many lenders plug AI in at the edges, like a chatbot on the website, instead of wiring into their day-to-day revenue workflow. I saw there's a tech platform that caters largely to the mortgage and real estate industry that I went to revisit their website just because I wanted to learn a little bit more about them and just see what advancements they make. And they had AI this, AI that, AI just splattered all over their website. And I started laughing. I was like, that's not AI, that's not what AI does. Right. And it was all just kind of fluff. There was very little substance behind it. So where I'm seeing AI actually move the needle for a lot of the clients I work with, as well as just other lenders in general that I do research on, is number one, with lead scoring and lead prioritization. If they have any kind of lead generation activity going on, using that behavioral data and even this possibly even soft credit pulls to kind of surface which leads are most likely to close, so that the LOs know exactly where to spend their time. Yeah. The other thing that's been really important, and I know that the folks over at Active Comply have done a great job with this, as well as other organizations, but is in the compliance and risk space, and automatically scanning through outbound emails and marketing content for TRID violations and other potential compliance issues. So you reduce that risk and you speed up your time to market and your ability to market properly. The other thing, then, this is something I've actually been engaged with a number of projects with clients on this, is around borrower retention, and being able to mine that past client data for those events and triggers and indicate someone that might be ready to either buy, move, refi, and then nudging the loan officer, if there's a loan officer connected to that client, nudging that loan officer to take action and seeing the responses there. I think the other underrated use of AI is as an adoption engine, and this would be more for internal purposes. The topic that we're discussing is that those AI-powered nudges can remind loan officers to log into their CRM, build a mortgage coach TCA, to send those follow-ups with those built-in templates. So the folks who are winning with AI are leveraging it in such a way that it makes a lot of that manual follow-up, a lot of the manual tasks that are just inherent to everyday mortgage operations, and automating the heck out of that, and then giving a loan officer that recipe of like, all right, here's your call list for today. Boom, 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 knock it out. And it's giving the loan officer a good bit more structure to their day if they didn't already invest the time to develop their own structure.
Yeah, how is that being received?
Very well. There are AIs obviously changing it every single day. It seems like every time I flip on my laptop, somebody's coming out with a new enhancement, or there's a new model that can do all these wild and amazing things. But it really comes back to, and this is one of Melissa, you mentioned Melissa Langdale, this is one of her key topics that she loves talking about, is it all rises and falls at the mercy of your source data. And the ability to integrate that source data into your workflows. So if your tools aren't integrated and your data is messy, AI just helps you make mistakes faster, and it's a race to mediocrity. But this is one of the reasons why I always pair that discussion around AI to that tech check 7 that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah. And I want to go back through those, encourage listeners to go back and listen to that part again. The tech 7, there's a lot of really good points there. I want to drill into it, but for the sake of time, I'm really want to focusing right now on the executive that listens to this, who suspects that maybe our mortgage marketing technology stack is bloated and it's just over the top. What are 3 concrete moves they should make in your recommendation over the next 30 days to wake up their tech and get a better ROI?
This is a great question, because this is actually exactly what every executive needs to be doing. Whether you believe wholeheartedly that you've got all of your tech 100% dialed in, or whether you think it's a jumbled mess, these 2 things, I would say the first thing you need to do is you need to run your own kind of mini audit on the top 5 platforms that you can, and pick whatever variable matters to you the most, either the most expensive platform, the most visible platform. Pick 5 of them and run a mini audit yourself internally on those 5, and just see where you're at, and pull that usage data for the last 30 days and see the number of people who logged in, who actually hit the primary action at least once. If you can't get that data quickly, that to me is already a red flag, because every vendor that's worth partnering with does provide that level of reporting for the ability. Either your team that's responsible for that platform can pull it themselves, or the vendor is should be providing it to them proactively. So take a look back over the last 30 days, see where everything is at, perform that audit, and that would be my step 1. Step 2 would be to translate everything into, once you do that audit, translate everything into a cost per funded loan for each tool. Estimate how many loans it genuinely influenced, and run that component of the audit as well. This really, I can't emphasize this enough, this changes that conversation, because now it's not, do we like this tool? Because it's such a subjective word, but it's now, is this tool beating our cost of acquisition targets? And you become very emphatic about the priority you should be giving to that particular platform. And then number 3, take a look at your internal training and whether or not you've got the right people taking ownership of that particular platform. If there's anything that is a sales tool that isn't falling under the ownership and the guise of the marketing division, I personally would want to know why that is. Is it a bandwidth issue? Because there's something about habit, because when we rolled out these tools, virtually, I'd say about 90% of all of the sales and marketing tools fell to my team to own and to take ownership of both the training and the engagement and the adoption of those platforms. And I didn't want to do that because I'm a control freak. I'm actually not. I wanted to do it because I knew there was such a great interconnectivity amongst all of these things. I wanted my team to have full visibility to as much of the ecosystem as possible. Obviously, we pull in IT when we needed a little bit more technical help or needed some coding or some development done. But as far as the best use cases of those platforms, I wanted my team to be responsible for that, because if you don't, then you run the risk of things becoming siloed and having the wrong initiatives emphasized of things that really aren't paying off, or there's conflicting messages because two different teams are not communicating with each other properly.
You touched on so many important points. How can people reach out to you and connect with you, James, to ask you questions and see if it's a fit for you to come into their organization?
Absolutely. The best way to connect with me is hit me up on LinkedIn. And
amazing how that works. I just had 60 connection requests. It's just amazing, and how
awesome.
People are reaching out. If you're not on LinkedIn using it, you're missing out. So and it's under James Duncan. Is that the best way to connect? So
just do a search for James Duncan. You may also have to put in the word Caelum, just because there's apparently a gajillion James Duncans in the world.
I found that one out. I had to do a little extra work to get it, but you put in Caelum, it'll work.
Look for the guy with the longish hair and you'll find me.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. Great information. I appreciate you sharing that conversation we had at the Total Expert Conference and sharing with our listeners. I really appreciate it, friend.
My pleasure.
You bet. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Some great information here. Share it with others if you are interested in this understanding. Some people are going to be resistant to this because they go like, don't mess with my deal. I want to keep going. But we've got to look at our costs. And that's why I think this podcast was so significant. We're spending a lot of money and we're not being accountable to it. Get James in here, help you figure your spend out. Anyway, I want to say a special thank you to our sponsors that make this podcast possible. Byte Software, First Close, Angel AI, True, Candid, MBA, Lenders One, Modex, Redder, and Mortgage Advisory Tools. And finally, Fuel.Inc. Check all these sponsors out on our website at Lykken on Lending. Thank you for being here. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
You've been listening to Lykken on Lending. Our passion is to bring you the latest insights, trends, and updates from the world of mortgages. So on this show, if you're a seasoned industry veteran or just getting started, it's your go-to source for all things mortgage. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We'll be back soon. Take care, and we'll see you next time on Lykken on Lending.